Welcome students to the next round of painting. We're going to transition away from doing this stuff on the paper towels, and this time we're going to do a little bit of torn paper painting, trying to utilize some papers that might be a little bit absorbent, a little bit different. I suppose you could use paper towel on this as well, but here's the idea we're going to work with. I have this painting, or actually a drawing. It's a charcoal drawing I did a while ago. It's a subject some of you may be familiar with. If you've had me in a painting one sort of a search situation, you've probably seen doing this birds over the lake painting. It's kind of a first painting we did. I'm going to utilize this as the outline or the design for our current painting, except we're going to do it kind of in a little bit of a different way. And dealing with paper that might not be the same as our watercolor paper. But this is the idea that we're looking for. This is the design or the layout of the thing that we're going to look for. Things you're going to need for this assignment. You're going to need some paper. I got 3 sheets of just typing paper or printer paper. That will work. That's some needful things that are going to work for us. You'll probably need your watercolor paints and that sort of thing. I got some tape that I can use to tape down the paper as we get that ready. I also have a couple of pieces of cardboard that I can use to tape down the paper when we paint it so it doesn't curl. Those are going to be kind of important. You're going to need enough cardboard to tape these things down. If you need to cut up a cardboard box, it only needs to be big enough to hold this paper as it's torn into different pieces on those. So I have 2. These look to be about 12 by 12 on that, maybe 13 or 14 inches by 14 inches. But that, that's another thing we're going to need. Let's set that down over here. You might need some scissors on this one eventually if we're cutting it. You might need also this tape I'm going to use for holding the stuff down. This is just holding maybe the sides after we start to put the papers together on those. So that's a little bit of an item. Maybe a glue or a glue stick would be helpful also for items you're going to need for this particular assignment. We're going to do it in 2 parts because of the need to actually find some of these items. Like, you might not have the cardboard cut ready to go and for taping up, so I want to make sure that this is not overburdensome on trying to do one huge assignment on that one, but I prefer to break it down into smaller parts, and there's a convenient part for drying time that will kind of have the split on it. So let me move some of these things off to the side now that we know what we need, and we'll go ahead and get started with the first steps of the painting that we're going to do. The dilemma that we run into with some of the paper, like this typing paper, is when we put the watercolor paints on it and the water gets saturated into the paper, and so that's a difficulty on something we're going to use. So we're going to kind of embrace that and create this painting, except we're going to do it in multiple sheets. So I'm going to take one sheet of paper. I'm just going to cut this in half. You remember from that original drawing that we had, there's some area where there's some water, and there's some area that are some sky. And so these little pieces here, I'm going to have one area that's going to be the sky, and I'm going to have another area down here that's going to be the water. So with that, I'll set those aside for just a second. The next thing I need an area, if you remember, to be kind of a mountain or something like that. So I need something that's kind of like just kind of a rolling hill on that one. And you could cut it, but I think it actually works better if you have a little bit of torn paper is what we're going to do on that. So I'm just going to start here at this part, and I'm going to tear it up so it starts to go up a little bit like that, and then I'll rotate it over and tear it so it starts to come down like this. And so there's my hill or my mountain. Okay, and so the idea being we might have some sky behind that, which is pretty good. And then down here, remember, we're going to have some water. But I also needed a valley. It's interesting that because of this torn paper, I was looking at it here and it's like, oh look, there's a valley right there that we could utilize. We could use this one if we wanted on those, but we could also we could tear another one that's not quite as deep on that. So if I tore this one down here like this, and it kind of came down as you didn't want exactly a reflection of that, then this valley piece can kind of come up here like this. So now that's not an exact reflection of it, but we do have a valley that we're dealing with. Now we also had over here, we had some little mountainous pieces that kind of went over the lake here, and so I'm going to throw this lake down here. This is going to be our lake piece. Do this so there's a little bit of overlapping there. And so what I need for this part down here is I need some little edges and stuff. Let's see, I think that might be a little big on that. Let's get that down a little bit more. Maybe like that for the water. And so I need some little corner pieces here. And so I'm going to take this piece of paper here, and I want it to go about this high. And I just need like this little island section here that I need to have come down kind of like this. And maybe that piece is going to go right here. And then I need another one to go over here on the other side. Let me go ahead and tear off one of those two. And so that piece is going to come down here. And I need that to drop down a little bit more. The cool thing about the torn paper part of it is, oops, that kind of went back. That's a weird looking one. Let's tear that up a little bit. Is the torn edge, that rough torn edge, will actually make it look a little bit more like what we're looking for, like maybe a mountain or something like that. And so we have the natural shape of it. So as we start to create the land for it on that, this is what the pieces are going to be. And we're going to stack them together like this eventually when they're all ready to be painted. Now I need another bit of stuff here. I just need a small piece of paper. We're going to be making the birds, and so the birds we're going to cut out after we've applied the paint. So I just need a little piece of paper like this that I can paint, and then we're going to cut the birds out of this particular piece of paper later. Now the rest of this is just kind of extra, and so we're going to move that off to the side. Let's go ahead and I'm going to move these guys up. Let me find that cardboard that I was talking about. So cardboard and taping down these pieces. Now we need to tape them down because they're going to want to curl as we start to add them into that. And so I have here down at the bottom of my piece of cardboard, I'm going to tape this guy down. And I'm just going to have a little thin piece where it overlaps here on the side. So it's just maybe 1/8 of an inch. You can kind of see that there. Let's tape down the other side. And so this will help keep it from curling when we add our paint. Okay, then let's move up the stairway a little bit here. Let's put this is going to be my sky piece. Oops, that was a little shorter than what I wanted. Not sure what I was thinking. There we go. And so we're going to tape that down on the sides. Now we don't want it taped along the edges here because that's where it's going to have our overlapping. We're going to have the papers physically going to overlap our different layers, which is going to make it look three-dimensional. And even if it curls up a little bit, it will look three-dimensional on that. Okay, then I'm going to put one more here as a valley. There's my valley. Tape it down. So we're ready to go. And tape this guy down from the side. I suppose if I was on like a cooking show or something like that and didn't have a continuous feed or something like that I'm trying to do on my video, I'd have the pieces already taped onto boards and that sort of a thing, but this is not that sort of a show that we're working on. So let's do that. So now on this one I have those 3 pieces ready to go. Let's bring in the other piece of cardboard because I still have extra. Okay, let's bring in a mountain. And the mountain we're going to tape down on the sides as well. I'm going to flip this because it's bowed the other way and I want it to be under compression a little bit more. Alright, and so there's a little bit of tape. Here's a little bit of tape. Alright, just a couple more pieces to tape down here. Now these ones here, I wanted to be kind of specific. I kind of reviewed and tried to think, well, what's the best way to tape these down so it's going to work best for us. Now I decided that if I take and I tape it along the bottom, like that, and then I tape it along the side, it will keep it taut. I tried an experiment like taping it on the side here and the end here, but what happened is I had to cut off a piece here and it made it look kind of awkward. But if I do this, we paint it first and then we take the scissors and remove this part of the white, it will work out perfect for us. And so that was the reason for taping it in this specific sort of a format, where we have it taped along the bottom and then taped along the side as well. And that'll make kind of sense as we start to assemble and make that work for us. And so right here. Last piece that we need to tape down is this one up top. This was going to be the black for the birds, right? That we're going to have, and so we just wanted that one to be nice and taut as well. Let's try not to waste too much of my tape. All right. Okay, now we're set. Now we're ready to paint. I bring over my watercolor paints a little bit, and here's what I want you to do. Now I have a big brush on that. If you don't have a big brush, that's okay. It might just take you a little bit longer for the initial things. Remember, we talked about how this paper really absorbs the water. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it and it's just sucking down the water just like that. And you'll notice, you can see where the spots start to come through that, hey, this guy is saturated. And so let's take this now, and I got my other brush. This is some black. This is going to be my birds. My birds are black, and so I got some there, and I'm just going to take and I'm going to put this in here like that. And the cool thing about it, it doesn't necessarily have to be an even thing. The paper, the paint will distribute through there pretty good. I don't really have to worry about it too much. And if it's splotchy, so much the better on those, because those were some of the things we're fighting on, having a paper that doesn't really absorb very well. Okay, I'm going to rinse out my brush here. So that's my black. Okay, so the birds are ready to go. Now these ones here, these were on the side. This is going to be kind of a darker greenish sort of a color that I had. So I'm going to come here and I'm just going to take and I'm going to saturate those papers, because that's what they do best, is getting saturated, and lots of water on those. I suppose you could use a sponge, or you could use some other sort of medium to get through that with those. Okay, darker green. Oh, I need to, this is going to work, this is going to work. So I have a little bit of residual black in my brush here, and so we can see where definitely a darker green on that because of that black, but that's okay. That's going to work for me. And I don't mind if it curls, if it, what it does on that. I think I'd like a little bit heavier concentration of pigment though on some of those. So I'm going to rub the tip of my brush into the pigment a little bit. Maybe bring this over here so I can kind of see what's going on, sort of, with those. And so this is just that green in here. And let's just rub the brush in here so we can get that pigment to come out a little bit more, and so we can have it a little bit darker. Here's another interesting thing that I noticed. Right along the edge here where it's torn, a lot of times that will absorb even more of the pigment right on that edge. And that works out really good. It makes a very nice edge for the surface. So if I come back in here with that, I can come in and I can mix some colors as well. I have another green over here I can kind of put in if I want. This is a heavier, darker green that I'm looking for on that. And there it is. Bam! Voila! And as this dries, it'll kind of absorb and do some funky moving and shifting and stuff like that. And so that's that one. Let's go over to getting some brown. I think I'm going to dump out my water real quick. Disadvantage of going with dark color first. I shouldn't have went the black first. I should have saved that for last, but that'll work out okay for me. Okay, so here we go. This one is our little hill, our mountain or hill in the background. On that, and I'm going to paint the whole thing, get it good and saturated, get it in soggy wet. You notice it'll curl somewhat there. Now if the tape's down, it's going to hold it in place, and then it'll dry, it'll stretch back out and be pretty good for us. So this one I need some browns. I have some browns here. Let's see, sorry there. My brush, I didn't have a paper towel for my brush. All this painting with paper towels and I didn't even have a paper towel. Okay, here we go. And so this has the browns. And since it's pretty saturated, it should absorb a lot of this brown. And we're just dumping it all in there. We want it good and saturated, and let the stuff, the magic work with those. Okay, here's a little more brown. I'm going to put it right along those edges. Remember, I said those edges would sometimes absorb a little bit more. Let's take advantage of that. Other things that might be good with that. And single color, a lot of times not the best, as we've talked about with watercolor. Here's a little bit of purple in there as well. That's what I normally use, browns and purples in my other, when I'm doing regular watercolors in that. I'm going to just a hair darker maybe. There we go. Okay, so now I can just leave that and let it dry. Okay, now remember I told you there's a convenient stopping point for this, let it dry. Now if the sun's out, which it's not today, but it was yesterday, and I can just let this sit outside. And so it'll dry up quicker if you want to get to the next step. The first step is going to be just applying the paint to the paper here, getting us that far. So here, I'm going to go get my other paper. All right, back at it here. So now the top one, this one was a valley on that. So our valley, let's get the water. And we get it all soaking wet. Now let's go ahead and grab some green. We already have some green in that other one here. Here's some more green that we have. And we want lots of it in here. The nice thing about this is I don't have to be precise with where the border is. I'm not going to just say, oh, I need to put it right on that line right. It doesn't matter. We just take it and we're good. This is a torn paper, stacked paper sort of a thing. That we're going to be doing. I think if we have some more of that other green in here too. I have a couple different greens. One green is good. If you want to do this, let's do this. This is yellow, one of the components of green. So if we wanted to, maybe make some differences there, we can come in and maybe put in a little bit of yellow. Okay, got my valley going. Let's rinse out the brush. And then paper towel. A lot of times you get the paper, oh, look at that. We can make a painting on that one too. We know how to do that. Okay, so now we need a sky, and we need a water area that we're going to be using. So here we go. Doesn't matter which one it is. Let's start with that one. And let's use the sky one first. And so I needed a yellow. Because we're going to do it kind of a sunset sort of a thing. So maybe down in this area I'm going to put in my yellow with those. Like that. And then it's going to transition maybe to some oranges or reds on that. Here's some oranges that we have. And then maybe some reds. Oh, here's some red over here. And mixing it up. And back over here we have some reds, so we have that good transition from the yellow up into the reds. And the paper and the water is going to mix that for me. I think I'd like to have the yellow just a little stronger on that with those. And so let's get that going here, kind of like that. And then maybe just touches of purple, right? Maybe just a little bit here and there. And there we go. That has some good things happening with us there. And then the water portion of it, that's going to be primarily blue. I'm going to slide this up just a little bit. Lots there. If you have one of those sponge brushes, you don't have to have the big special watercolor brush. If you have like one of those, I don't know, cost a couple dollars for a sponge brush, but it has a real wide surface on it for moving lots of paint around or water, that would work great on those. Or even have you a big paintbrush, like painting a house paintbrush, as long as the bristles are not too stiff and everything, you could use something like that to help with this particular assignment. Okay, so there's some of our preliminary blues. Now I wanted it a little more concentrated down over here. And so we're going to get some more. You want it kind of irregular, right? You want it because water is not always just smooth, smooth, smooth. And then the last little thing that I found too is greens, right? This will help unify some things. You know that we have some greens in our water, and we have some greens in our land as well. And so that's probably going to do us. Okay, so now we've created our various areas of value and color for our painting. And the next step is going to be putting it all together. But first, and this is where we're going to stop for today, is we need to let this thing dry. And so we're going to let it dry and then pick up on the next lesson with the dry pieces of paper. That ought to do us. Thanks. Bye.